After a successful landing of Chandrayaan-3 that has taken place just a few days ago, now ISRO has announced its maiden mission to the sun. That is Aditya L1, where in fact ISRO will be sending within the span of about a week this particular project. It's been seen as a very, very ambitious one. Of course, images from the lunar surface also that have come out today, where ISRO has said that the rover came across a 4-meter diameter crater positioned 3 meters ahead of its location. The rover Pragyan was then commanded to retrace its path and is safely now heading down a new path. While the rover continues to study the lunar surface, India looks ahead and is now aiming for the moon. ISRO is set to launch its first ever space-based solar observatory, Aditya L1, on the 2nd of September. This spacecraft will lift off at 11:50 hours IST from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota. The spacecraft will also be placed in a halo orbit around the Lagrange point, or L1, of the Sun-Earth system, which lies approximately 1.5 million kilometers from Earth. This strategic positioning will allow continuous observation of the sun without any eclipses or occultations.
तो अगला जो मिशन आ रहा है वो आदित्य L1 मिशन के नाम पे है। आदित्य, जो आप जानते हैं, आदित्य वर्ड का मीनिंग ही है सूर्य। आदित्य L1 मिशन अभी सितंबर 2 को लॉन्च होगा। का लोकेशन जो होगा वो L1 पे होगा। L1 का वर्ड है लग्रांजियन। ऐसे काफ़ी सारे लग्रांजियन पॉइंट है जो सन और अर्थ के बीच वाले लाइन में है। और L1 का बहुत एक इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है कि कोई ग्रहण ऑकल्टेशन से सन छुपेगा नहीं इस मिशन से। तो यही इसका बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है इस मिशन L1 लोकेशन, कि ये हमेशा सूर्य को ऑब्जर्व करता रहेगा, कभी सूर्य इसे ढकेगा नहीं।
So let's take a look at what all missions that are planned by ISRO in the near future as well. The next lunar mission that ISRO is planning with Japanese collaboration is the LUPEX mission, or the Lunar Polar Exploration. That's slated for 2024-25. LUPEX will explore permanently shaded polar region of the moon. Now, ISRO has also set its sight on the sun. Of course, as we know, it is focusing on this early September launch of Aditya L1. This is what we've been talking about. Aditya L1 is India's first mission to study the sun. Spacecraft will be placed in a halo orbit around the Lagrange point 1, or L1. These are positions in space where objects tend to stay put. The project will study the sun's corona, solar emissions, solar winds and flares. There's also a trip to the Venus on the cards. The trip to Venus is on the cards within the next couple of years. Exact details of this mission are yet to be revealed. Sending humans into space, or the Gaganyaan project, is also there, where the human spaceflight capability will be demonstrated. 3 crew members are now planned to be launched in an orbit of 400 kilometers for the mission. The crew will be brought back safely to Earth by landing in sea waters. The project launch is expected in 2 years' time, in 2025. Now, India appears to have fired a new space race as well, because clearly global space exploration efforts are in top gear. Excuse me. We know and we will now take a look at the missions in the pipeline that are there globally. Is the NASA Crew 7 mission. Crew 7 astronauts have reached ISS aboard the SpaceX Dragon capsule. 4 astronauts have boarded the International Space Station. They will place the 4 astronauts who are already living up there since March. NASA's human mission to the moon. This will be NASA's first human mission to the lunar South Pole. Artemis 3 is currently being planned for 2025, and this mission will mark humanity's return to the moon in over 50 years. Chinese lunar mission is also on the cards. They're planning to put boots on the moon by 2030, and China is developing next generation rocket to launch an upgraded spacecraft as well. Europe is planning the Plato mission, which will study terrestrial exoplanets in orbits up to the habitable zone of sun-like stars. The EarthCare mission is also on the cards, that will study the role that clouds and aerosols play in reflecting incident solar radiation. Let's quickly take this across, in fact, to our guest. Dr. Vagesh Mishra is an assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. Joining us. With us also is Dr. P. Sreekumar, who's the director of Manipal Center for Natural Sciences and a former research scientist at NASA. With us also is Michael Gold, Chief Growth Officer at the Redwire Space. Let me come across first and foremost to Dr. Vagesh Mishra. Dr. Vagesh Mishra, you have a payload on board this Aditya L1 mission. Take us through how long it will actually take for this mission to arrive at that L1 spot, and what really are we hoping, speaking?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So, as you explained that L1 point is the first Lagrange point between the Sun-Earth system. And if you, in terms of distance, it is 1.5 million kilometers away from the Earth. It means if we recently ISRO launched the moon mission. So if we compare the distance between Earth and moon, it is around 3.8 lakh kilometers. So the L1 point is almost 4 times the distance of the Earth moon. So it will take almost 109 days to reach near the L1, and of course after that there would be insertion of this satellite into the halo orbit around the L1.
Right.
So L1 point is very important, and as we go through the course of this discussion, I would speak more about the contribution from the Indian Institute of Astrophysics in terms of the one prime payload, which is VELC, Visible Emission Line Coronagraph.
What are you hoping to achieve with that, very quickly?
Yeah, so coronagraph is an instrument which creates artificial eclipse to observe the outermost layer of the sun. Like when eclipse happens, natural eclipse, moon actually occurs the solar disk, and at that time one can see the outermost layer, corona.
Okay. Let me quickly take this across to Michael Gold. Michael Gold, are we looking at a sudden resurgence in space activity? Because, you know, from the United States to China to Japan, of course, India has its plans that are out there as well. Are we looking at a sudden resurgence in terms of the frequency of space flights, for instance? We've seen, of course, how in fact, Virgin as well as Mr. Elon Musk have all been very active, but they are looking at more the space tourism aspect. But is there now going to be some kind of a resurgence in space activity after a long gap?
We absolutely are. We are looking at a second golden age of space that, by the way, is going to far exceed Apollo. That in the Apollo era, it was America, it was the government. Now, for the tremendous success of India, we see global capabilities. We see numerous nations involved. India recently signed the Artemis Accords, joining a global family of nations that is going to go to the moon and is bringing not only its technology, eventually its astronauts, but its values as well. And that's why India's success is such a success for the free world, that it's taking all of us, there's going to be data shared. And again, as opposed to the Apollo era, there's a giant resurgence in commercial space. Nothing like that existed in the Apollo era. And what I'm even more excited about than what's happening with Chandrayaan and ISRO's government efforts is under Prime Minister Modi, he has pushed forward with reforms to open up the Indian space sector to commercial activities. And as you talk about SpaceX and what my company's doing, we're building roads on the moon, solar arrays for the ISS and Deep Space Gateway. I'm so excited about what India will contribute to the private sector. I truly believe when we combine the innovation of the private sector in America and across the world with Indian human capital manufacturing capabilities, we're going to see an era of exploration like never before.
All right. Let me bring in Dr. Sreekumar as well. He's the director of the Manipal Center of National Scientists and former research scientist at NASA. Dr. Sreekumar, are we looking at an era of more cooperation or of more competition? Because, you know, we saw how Russia tried to land the Luna 25 module just a few days before Chandrayaan 3 touchdown. Is there going to be more of a competitive dynamic to this, or are we looking at countries cooperating? Because the belief now is that whether it's India and US or ESA, all are cooperating also a lot more in terms of sharing a fair amount of technical and other know-how.
That's correct. It will be a phase of cooperation because these are very challenging missions. No single nation typically would like to continue to pursue this for various reasons. The technology and certain lot of information that we derive from each of these missions are shared, and that has been extremely helpful. I mean, in preparing for the Chandrayaan missions of ISRO, there have been substantial help from other space agencies with regard to knowledge that have been acquired from earlier missions. So cooperation is indeed the way to go. We are planning to do that. We've done that in Chandrayaan 1 itself, a fantastic collaboration with global countries when you allowed the experiments to be on board our mission. And we'll be doing that in future as well. So I think it's a phase of cooperation.
Right. So you're not going to term this a space race?
Absolutely not. I think it's a more of a recognition of the fact that science is global, technologies will also be global at some level, and countries have to come together. Individual nations may not find it very easy to define boundaries to science, and hence we collaborate.
Michael Gold, very quickly, I saw you smiling there. Are you going to disagree with Dr. Sreekumar?
I will both agree and disagree. I agree if we look at the cooperation with the Artemis Accords nations, Chandrayaan-3 is already helping Artemis in terms of understanding where to go, what it's like in South Pole. But I think with China, there is a competition. That with the autocratic states, there's going to be a competition with those countries.
So a little bit of both, cooperation and competition. That's perhaps the roadmap ahead. That's perhaps the course ahead, and that's the next frontier, as they say in several of those space movies. Thanks so much, Dr. Vagish Mishra, Dr. P. Sreekumar, as well as Michael Gold for joining us on ISRO's future plans and also the direction that the rest of the world is headed when it comes to space exploration. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.